Now, WBOC News at 6, Delmarva's news leader.
Shake, rattle, and roll. The camera that's always aimed at the White House captures what we all felt this afternoon. A rare earthquake hits the East Coast. Here on Delmarva, people poured out of buildings and into the safety of the streets.
If the whole floor moved.
Did they have any trouble convincing you to leave the building?
Absolutely not.
Not at all.
They were running.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Don Elkins.
And I'm Steve Hammond. Welcome to WBOC News at 6. It was an earthquake in central Virginia, felt all the way from New York City down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Viewers across the peninsula called in today, worried the earthquake had happened in their backyard. Let's get right to Brian Keene with an update on what happened.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. Had to wait till USGS put out where the epicenter was actually located, and it was in central Virginia. In fact, 9 miles south-southwest of Mineral. That was the closest city, kind of a small city, so to give you a little bit better reference, the quake actually happened 39 miles north and west of Richmond, Virginia, and it was a pretty substantial quake, at least by East Coast standards. A 5.9 on the Richter scale. It happened at 1:51 this afternoon and shook the entire Delmarva Peninsula. Just to give you a little frame of reference, that was about 230 miles from here in Salisbury. So we are going to continue to monitor the possible aftershocks, but our attention now focuses on Irene, and we're going to have more on Hurricane Irene and the potential impacts that'll have on the peninsula coming up in just a couple minutes.
All right, Brian, and we have live team coverage across the peninsula tonight. Midshore Bureau Chief Brian Spiros is live in Cambridge tonight, and Sussex County Bureau Chief Michael Leparty is joining us from the Milton newsroom. Let's begin with Brian, who was in one of the worst spots that you want to be during an earthquake. Brian?
Well, Steve, my photographer and I were actually driving over the Choptank River Bridge when our car began to shake and sway back and forth. We thought it was maybe the wind or something was wrong with the car, but once we got into Cambridge, we saw people pouring out onto the streets and realized that all the commotion was the result of an earthquake. It was business as usual in downtown Cambridge this afternoon until Mother Nature caused some tense moments.
All of a sudden, the whole building just swayed.
Stephanie Malkus was working inside her store, Sugar Magnolia, when the earthquake hit.
The way it was swaying, I panicked and I ran out, and the two customers I had in the store at the time, we all ran out, and I saw everybody. I panicked. I was nervous.
And she wasn't alone.
The walls started shaking and the lights started moving back and forth, and bottles started rattling, and I just told everybody to get out of the building, and everybody ran out into the street.
The rattling even caused some concern at the county courthouse, where everyone thought inmates were fighting on another floor.
The whole building started shaking, and we thought that they was fighting upstairs, and then the state troopers started running.
And while some figured the ground shaking was the result of an earthquake, others had no clue what had happened.
I figured it had to be something like an earthquake, you know. I've never felt anything like that before.
The shelves just started shaking. I mean, I literally thought the building was coming down. I mean, I'd never seen anything, experienced anything like it. The ground under my feet was shaking.
I was shocked at first, so I wasn't nervous then, but now I'm like feeling a little bit like, oh my God, like it was an earthquake, so I don't know, but it is scary.
After the quake, cell phone lines became so overloaded that many people weren't able to make or receive phone calls. Now, no major damage has been reported as a result of the earthquake. However, Chesapeake College did cancel all of their day and evening classes as a result of the quake at both their Y Mills and Cambridge campuses. We're reporting live tonight from the Midshore. Brian Spiros, WBOC News, Cambridge.
All right, Brian, as Brian just told us here, cell phone service may be one of the few victims of the earthquake, at least temporarily. Quite a few people could not make calls after the earthquake happened, and many who did tried to call 911. WBOC Sussex County Bureau Chief Michael Leparty is in the Milton newsroom tonight. And Michael, we understand the quake kept emergency dispatchers kind of busy.
Don, we're talking hundreds of calls, and telephone providers say they did not experience any damage. Instead, it was likely the volume of calls that led to the trouble, and lots of volume at the Emergency Operations Center in Georgetown. Sussex County dispatchers typically take between 5 and 15 calls an hour on a day like today. In the first 30 minutes after the quake, they recorded roughly 200. The county says its 911 system performed as expected. Still, the service problems frustrated callers trying to reach family.
The second time I tried to call them, I just got this beeping sound in there, and that was it. But I called my mother. She's with Verizon. When I called her, it went through on her cell phone.
The telephone system did handle all of those calls, that call volume of 200 calls or close to 200 calls in a half-hour period. The 911 system did perform fine. It did what it was designed to do.
And Sussex County buildings in Georgetown were evacuated earlier, though they have since passed inspection and people were allowed back in. DelDOT did not report any damage, and Delaware is actually considered a medium risk state for seismic activity. We're told today's quake felt like a 1 or between a 1 and a 2 here in Delaware. The Geological Survey says the largest recorded event here was a 3.8 back in 1973. Steve?
Michael Leparty, thank you. The quake also forced evacuations in Dover. William Henry Middle School was evacuated shortly after the earthquake, but the school was not in session. WBOC's Dover Bureau Chief Jeremy Tucker in our Dover newsroom this evening with more on what teachers felt and heard.
Steve, school officials say teachers heard cracking and then a roar as the earthquake struck today. City officials and the district then evacuated the building and inspected the school for damage. No serious damage was caused to the school, but an open house scheduled for tonight was canceled. Folks in Dover say feeling the quake was a weird experience.
I wasn't scared, but I guess once I found out it was an earthquake, I kind of thought to myself, wow, I've never been through an earthquake and didn't know that we'd have an earthquake here in Delaware.
A reaction from a lot of people in Dover today. By the way, school officials say William Henry in Dover should reopen tomorrow. Now back to you.
Jeremy, and while major regional airports had to close because of the quake, Salisbury's airport stayed open for business. Airport manager Bob Bryant says other airports closed because air traffic controllers had to evacuate control towers. But again, everything remains up and running at the Wycomico County Airport. Still in Salisbury, workers downtown evacuated outside their buildings during the quake. All just a precaution. There were no reports of any injuries or damage at those government buildings again in Salisbury. And emergency officials in Wycomico County were in the middle of making plans for another kind of natural disaster. We're talking about Hurricane Irene. That's when the earthquake sent shockwaves around the peninsula.
Right, as of this afternoon, Salisbury and Wycomico emergency operations are resuming normal operations. Let's check in with WBOC's Co-Em here on the Newsplex Co. No major injuries or damage to report in Wycomico.
Steve and Don, still public safety officials switched gears to going from planning mode to review mode. And guess what they found? 2 new cracks in the government office building in downtown Salisbury. There you see it. Also, the city police department headquarters now has a crack in its ceiling. Salisbury mayor tells us he was in a school library at his other job as a teacher at the time of the quake.
I sort of swayed back and forth a little bit. A couple books dropped and people were like, I think I'm going to go find my kids right now. And I politely excused myself from our principal, Dr. Collins, and I said, let me go find out as much information as I can.
And if you haven't already, a reminder to check for any damage in your own homes and report changes to public property from the shaking to Salisbury City Service Center or the city police.
All right. We'll stay in Salisbury here. Workers at Sherwood Kia said they felt the tremors as they were working the garage. Can you imagine being under a car on that lift there? No problems there. The parts were knocked off the shelves, though, there in the parts department.
I didn't know what was going on. I felt kind of seasick, and everybody's like, it's an earthquake, it's an earthquake. So I ran outside because I didn't want the building to come down on me, because it was so strong.
No reports of any damage there at Sherwood.
And without a doubt, one of the worst possible places you could be during any earthquake is on a scaffold about 60 feet above the ground, repointing a chimney. That's where Walt Tawes was this afternoon in Salisbury. He says he thought the whole thing was a joke.
It was really scary. I thought somebody was down here below shaking the scaffold. It was really bad. I had to come down. It was the worst thing I ever experienced.
Now you see him, he's still up there. Tawes waited a little while and says he climbed back up and went back to work.
Good for him. If you're wondering how today's rumblings affected high rises at the beach, there's good news. We checked in with fire officials in Ocean City today as we look at aerials from Chopper 16. The fire department tells us no buildings were evacuated. All the high rises are structurally sound in the Worcester County beach town. Of course, everybody was weighing in on all of this on Facebook. Ashley wrote, I was sitting at work by myself. I felt something shaking. I looked over. The drink I was drinking was shaking. I was freaked out. I hope we don't have another experience like that again. Karen writes in, I was sitting on Route 1 at the Midway when the car started shaking. My dog went nuts, and I didn't know why all of this was happening.
Brandy says her house is 110 years old. She says she thought it was falling in on her. Pretty scary stuff when you have no idea what's going on. Bry writes, we were in Walmart in Dover, Delaware. Ceiling tiles fell, signs swayed back and forth. The walls and windows rattled. Definitely felt like more than just a little shake for us. If you'd like to weigh in on the conversation or see what others are saying, get it now on WBOC.com.
Still to come here on WBOC News at 6, we will next turn our attention back to Hurricane Irene.
Yeah, how people in one Delmarva resort town are keeping an eye on the weather. That's when WBOC News at 6 continues. Okay, maybe it was a little shaky, but still it was a beautiful day for people at the beach in Ocean City. However, people who live there and visitors have started to hear more about Hurricane Irene as it starts plowing in our direction. OC Emergency Services Director has started planning for what could get here by the end of the week.
Ocean City has learned from previous storms that have impacted them, and we're paying very close attention to Irene. Irene has the potential to impact us this weekend, and we take our job seriously, and now's the time for the public to prepare.
If Ocean City had to evacuate people north of 62nd Street there would take make sure I've got this right here, would take Route 90 on both lanes to leave the island. People south would use Route 50 bridge to leave Ocean City. And again, Hurricane Irene could be here, I guess, by the end of the week.
All right, let's check in with Brian Keene to see when we could be dealing with destructive winds, heavy rains, and potential flooding.
Well, you guys nailed it. It looks like the end of the work week. We could see the outer bands by late in the day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, the latest forecast track certainly has Irene occupying our attention over the upcoming weekend. You can see Irene spinning out in the, I guess, the south and southwestern Atlantic. We are going to continue to watch it as it presses off to the east for a little bit, and then it's going to take a veer off to the west and eventually to the north. You can see it will be a major hurricane, Category 3 or higher, maybe skirting the I guess the eastern flank of the Carolinas and passing us. Good news is the forecast track continues to press eastward, and these are all the models out there. You can see those what we call spaghetti plots. Well, they're in pretty good unison as far as the forecast track as we track Hurricane Irene. Category 1 storm off of our coastline will bring winds 74 to 95 miles an hour. Certainly enough to destroy property. Just to give you a frame of reference, those thunderstorms that downed many trees and power lines last week, well, they were packed at about 60 miles per hour. So we're going to be talking substantially higher winds for a much longer period of time if Irene stays on the current forecast track. We're going to talk about what impacts it could have on Delmarva, and that coming up in just a couple of minutes.
All right, Brian. We've got more coming your way tonight, but first, WBOC is proud to serve Fort Miles and proud to serve all of Sussex County.
With more now on Fort Miles, here's WBOC's Captain Willie Dykes in Chopper 16.
Cape Henlopen is all about fun and recreation these days, but it once had a very important job. It was home to Fort Miles, a coastal artillery installation built in 1941 that protected the Delaware Bay and River during World War II. Tower number 7 was one of several used to direct fire from the big guns, like this 12-incher that's open for tours in Battery 519. The headquarters area has barracks and support facilities restored with equipment from its active duty days. Artillery pieces are on display, including the deck gun from a German U-boat that surrendered here in 1945. Now, this Saturday, August 27th, from 10 till 4, Fort Miles will host the Dog Days of War with reenactors in period uniforms conducting tours and demonstrating the weapons used in that era. WBOC is proud to serve Fort Miles and all of Sussex County, and proud to partner with my friends at Johnny Janosic World of Furniture. Shop today in one of the largest stores in the entire United States. Now, that's a lot of furniture at the guaranteed lowest price. And tell them Captain Willie sent you. I'm Captain Willie in Chopper 16.
Well, we continue to track Irene. Irene currently well south of our area, well over 1,000 miles, but is starting to take more shape and is expected to strengthen as it works its way closer to the east coast of the United States. More on the forecast track coming up a little later, but right now here at home, the calm before the storm if you discount the earthquake we had earlier this afternoon. Yeah, 5.9 on the Richter scale, just a little bit north and west of the Richmond area. So we were shaking and rattling, but lots of sunshine out there and fairly calm as far as the weather is concerned. We are tracking a little frontal system well out to our west that will bring us our next chance of rain right before Irene arrives and potentially brings us a lot of rainfall. More on that in just a second, but you can see over the next 12 hours, relatively clear skies and temperatures back down the upper 50s to lower 60s overnight. Tons of sunshine out there for midweek, but the clouds will be thickening up as a little cold front approaches from the west for Thursday. Only going to provide us with some slight chances for some showers and thunderstorms late in the day, which may spill on over into early Friday morning. The bulk of our Friday looks dry, and then potentially the outer bands of Irene reaching us overnight Friday night, and then the weekend, well, let's just say it could get interesting. Current temperatures ranging from the mid to upper 70s, so pretty uniform across the peninsula. We saw a nice cool day, northerly winds for most of the day, light and variable as far as the winds are concerned now. In Georgetown, well, knocked offline momentarily. We'll continue to monitor that as we progress into the evening hours. Hopefully they come back online. We are going to watch this high pressure center shift off the coast. As it does so, we're going to see the return of southerly winds. That means more heat and humidity for the end of the work week. Here's that frontal system that will provide maybe a 30% chance of some late day showers and thunderstorms on Friday, but of course everybody is talking about Irene. Actually downgraded a little bit today, back to a Category 1 storm, so good news, right? Don't count your chickens before they're hatched. We are expecting some rapid intensification as it works its way into much warmer, shallower waters. You can see by 2 p.m. on Friday, it will be a Category 3 storm, so a major hurricane as it works its way up the eastern seaboard. The good news is the forecast track a little bit right or east of what it was over the last couple of days, so hopefully that trend continues to follow suit and we move this right out into the central Atlantic, but probably not going to be likely. In fact, maybe a Category 1 storm as it sits off our coast as we work our way into Saturday evening / Sunday morning. So how intense is a Category 1 storm? It packs winds of 74 to 95 miles an hour, and that doesn't count the storm surge. Now, storm surge shouldn't be quite as bad as a hurricane that would be moving in straight from the Atlantic, but really just devastating wind speeds, and this will be for a prolonged period of time. So have an emergency plan in place and plan to execute it on Saturday and Sunday. Hopefully we get lucky and we will be unscathed by Irene, but that is not looking likely. We are bracing for the potential for some extreme flooding. We're also going to be talking astronomical high tides to wrap up the work week and take us into the weekend. So any flooding event that does occur will be a little bit nastier than normal. So again, have an emergency plan in place and hopefully you won't have to use it.
Coming up in sports, we are continuing our high school football previews and going inside the huddle with Y High.
We'll find out if the Indians have the pieces in place to make a run at the Bayside South Championship. Scott joins us next.
Hey, how you doing, folks? Over the years, Y High head football coach Dave Nettles has produced a handful of Division I players. It's a program which has a history of success on that field. Now, I've talked to a lot of Bayside coaches about this upcoming football season. They've all said, watch out for Y High in 2011. It's time to go inside the huddle with those Y High Indians. This team got after it in the offseason. The players spent countless hours in the weight room. Coach Nettles has preached from day one, anything less than excellence won't be accepted. A couple players to watch out for this season are senior quarterback Devron McLeod and junior running back Dante Ayers. You put them together in the same offense, a lot of points will be put up on that scoreboard. No question, the Indians are one of the favorites in the Bayside South.
With the preparation that we just went through, I think this team could very well stand the ability to win every game that we play. It'll get a little bit more difficult once we make and if we make the playoffs.
We aged a lot. Last year our team was real young. This year we get more experience, ready to play.
We have so many weapons on offense that it's gonna be okay. They can load the box, and we have threats everywhere else. So load the box and you might lose something else.
Y High opens the 2011 campaign hosting Snow Hill. September 9th, a Salisbury City showdown at Wicomico County Stadium against Parkside. In week 3, the Indians travel to face Colonel Richardson. And toward the end of the month, Y High will battle Easton. Tomorrow night, right here during our 6 o'clock sportscast, we'll be heading to the Henlopen Conference. Sussex Central, the defending North Division champs, have another strong team over there in Georgetown. We'll tell you if the Golden Knights have what it takes to repeat in 2011, so check out Sussex Central tomorrow night. And hey, are you a college or pro football fan? Make sure you sign up today for the WBOC and Fox 21 Pigskin Pick'em contest. You'll be able to challenge your friends, and you could even win a trip to Hawaii, plus other great prizes. It's completely free, folks. All you have to do to play is sign up on our sports page at WBOC.com. So, guys, a fun way to kick off the new football season.
And I like free, but they won't let me.
I know, sorry.
Stay with us. Brian has a look at your weekend forecast right after this.
Developing stories we're following across the peninsula tonight. First, of course, was that 5.9 magnitude earthquake that occurred in central Virginia, centered 40 miles northwest of Richmond. The earthquake felt from North Carolina all the way up north to Canada and everywhere in between. Geological experts say the East Coast should expect some aftershocks. Also, we are still following Hurricane Irene, which could hit the peninsula sometime Sunday. If it doesn't hit us, certainly we will feel the effects from Irene. And with more on that, let's check in with Brian.
Yeah, Saturday into Sunday, certainly worth watching. Irene right now well south of us, over 1,000 miles away, but is expected to intensify, probably becoming a major hurricane within the next day or two. So what does that mean? A major Category 3 hurricane, 111 to 130 miles an hour. By the time it makes its way towards us, expecting winds in the 74 to 95 mile an hour range. Storm surge of 4 to 5 feet, so that is a very, very dangerous situation. And keep in mind, those winds, they're going to be blowing that hard for a prolonged period of time. Until then, we are going to see a slight chance for some showers and storms late in the day on Thursday as a weak front approaches. Hopefully that'll knock Irene a little farther out to sea.
All right, Sir Brian's got more on the weather and also more on the quake coming up tonight on WBOC News at 7. Join us in a half an hour. For News Anytime, get it now on WBOC.com. CBS Evening News with Scott Pelley is up next.
Good night, everybody.